You know those people who keep rewatching the same shows, the same movies, the same videos? Even though there are thousands of new options waiting, most people don't understand it. They say it's boring. They say it's a waste of time. They say, how can you watch the same thing again? But what if rewatching isn't about entertainment at all? What if it's about something much deeper? If you've ever felt drawn to familiar stories, familiar scenes, familiar voices, this video might explain more about you than you expect. Today, we're breaking down the psychology of people who rewatch the same content. And by the end, you might stop judging yourself for it. Let's start with the most important piece. When you already know what's going to happen, your brain relaxes. There's no suspense, no uncertainty, no emotional ambush waiting around the corner. Psychologists call this reduced cognitive load. Your brain doesn't have to work as hard to predict outcomes. And when the brain works less, the nervous system feels safer. That's why rewatching feels so calming. In a world full of constant alerts, breaking news, and unexpected stress, familiar content offers something rare: predictability. You already know who survives. You already know how the story ends. Nothing bad can suddenly happen without warning. And for many people, that sense of safety matters more than novelty. There's a reason people rewatch content more during difficult periods of life. During stress, anxiety, burnout, or emotional overload, the brain becomes hyper-alert. It's scanning for threats. It's preparing for problems that haven't even happened yet. New content demands attention. It demands emotional investment. It demands energy. Familiar content does the opposite. It tells your brain, you've been here before. You survived this. You can rest. That's why people often return to shows they watched during safer or happier times. The content becomes associated with emotional memory. You're not just watching a show. You're reconnecting with a version of yourself that felt more stable. Rewatching also gives you a sense of control over your emotional experience. You know which scenes are comforting. You know which moments are funny. You know exactly when relief is coming. There are no surprises. And that control is powerful, especially for people who feel overwhelmed in daily life. Psychologists see this as a form of emotional self-regulation. Instead of numbing out or dissociating, you're choosing a known emotional pathway. You're guiding your nervous system toward calm. That's not weakness. That's awareness. Here's something most people miss. When you rewatch something, you're not actually watching the same thing twice. You're watching it as a different person. Your experiences have changed. Your perspective has shifted. Your emotional state is different. So different lines hit harder. Different scenes suddenly make sense. Moments you ignored before now feel important. Rewatching becomes reflective, almost like rereading a book at a different stage of life. The story stays the same. You don't. Research suggests that people who enjoy rewatching familiar content tend to be more introspective. They process internally. They reflect deeply. They revisit thoughts and emotions rather than chasing constant stimulation. For these people, novelty isn't always exciting. Sometimes it's exhausting. They don't need the world to constantly surprise them. Their inner world already has enough complexity. That's why familiar content doesn't feel boring to them. It feels grounding. Now, here's an important distinction. Not all rewatching comes from the same place. Some people rewatch content because it genuinely restores them. It helps them feel balanced, calm, and present. Others rewatch because new experiences feel overwhelming, because uncertainty triggers anxiety, or because emotional risk feels too high. One is comfort, the other is avoidance. And the difference matters. The question isn't, do you rewatch content? The question is, how do you feel afterward? Do you feel calmer, clearer, more regulated? Or do you feel stuck, disconnected, and withdrawn? That answer tells you everything. We live in a culture that glorifies novelty. New shows, new trends, new content every second. So rewatching gets labeled as lazy or uncreative. But psychology sees it differently. Choosing familiarity in an overstimulating world can be a sign of emotional intelligence. It means you know what stabilizes you. You're not chasing stimulation just to keep up. You're choosing what actually works for your nervous system. So if you're someone who rewatches the same comfort show, who puts on familiar videos in the background, who finds peace in stories you already know, you're not stuck. You're not boring. You're not failing to move on. You're regulating. You're grounding. You're choosing safety over chaos. And in a world that never stops demanding your attention, that's not a flaw. That's self-awareness. So tell me, do you rewatch the same content because it genuinely comforts you? Or because right now, new things feel like too much? Let me know in the comments. And if this video felt uncomfortably accurate, the next one will explain another habit most people misunderstand about themselves. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.